Kwah and TabzG laid out a perfect framework of how to win games. By watching them, we can understand how to consistently win games and take three principles away. Don't overcommit, timing is everything, and you play to win the game. Let's dive right in and see what we got. For these two, it begins off spawn. They're uncontested and have a perfect loot path to come together, understand where they should be at all times, how quickly they should rotate and loot, and where and when they should get their materials. Now they're going to prioritize looting and then go for the metal, then get their wood and brick as they need to make their rotates. This is the optimized loot path, and not enough players take the time to optimize their loot path with their duo in order to make sure they're moving out of their drop spot, split, whatever you want to call it, as soon as possible. Optimizing your loot path both means making sure you're hitting the most efficient material at all times, and then also making your pathing to go through each chest, floor spawn, and various other loot that may be at your POI on your way out to finish at a position that puts you ready for your rotate. Once rotating out of the POI, they must look for tags, and we're going to see patience and understanding out of Tabz and Kwah. We're going to see Tabz get a beam onto a player down below, which they easily could have jumped on, but then decide to prioritize positioning and their rotation instead of trying to take a long drawn-out fight that could get third-partied and ultimately grief both players' games. This is a really smart play, and not enough players decide to move on from a fight rather than force it at every instance necessary. This isn't the only time that these two do this. They're going to constantly be looking for tags while rotating, even get several beams, but often they're going to choose to box up and play it safe as opposed to go for the fight. In each instance that we see this, they're in good position materials and heals wise, and they're not going to gain anything other than a couple of points from getting this elimination. For them, getting the win is much more important, so you get the tags and you get out. You don't want to get drawn into a long fight, which then gets third partied and is a 50-50 with all the players nearby that are going to be shooting at you. Their patience and timing throughout this game is excellent as they continue to make rotates, look for tags along the way, but don't overcommit to any fight. Then, when they do get held up or need to make a further rotate, they understand when the time is right to do that or how to allow themselves to make a rotate. In this case, they're going to get a beam onto a player before they move forward and take that player out. Then, when they see the team is no longer staring right at them while trying to make the rotate, they're in a crystal clear position just to move forward without getting sprayed at. This is how you have to rotate in this meta, and TabzG and Kwah give us a perfect example of that right here. After they get securely boxed up, they understand what's going on around them. They're using their surroundings, their audio, their visuals to see that players are getting held on the outside of zone. Now, instead of overcommitting and trying to get into this, they're going to simply take some shots, and then once the players go down, use that harpoon to get themselves some extra loot and materials, and that is why you hold a harpoon. This is going to sustain them, give them more mats, more resources, without putting them in a dangerous area or location. It's a great idea and understanding of how to play to win the game, rather than just play to try and get into endgame. The harpoon allows you to sustain without taking risky fights. Now I want to show this fourth zone rotation. Tabz is going to wait till he hears audio of a player shooting and then going to use that knowing that that player is located and fixed already in zone. They're focusing on something else instead of Tabz and Kwah, and then they're going to use their materials to protect themselves, get up close to zone, and continue to build into zone. They don't panic when they start getting pressured and make a nice rotation in. Much like we saw in the previous zone, these two are going to recognize a player making a late rotate. From this point, they're going to let that player come to them. They're not going to overcommit. They're going to take shots, try and grab the elim, which they do get one of, and then allow the players to rotate towards them. Since they're not putting as much pressure on, the players will start moving towards Tabz and Kwah. Knowing that these players rotating are already weak, Tabz and Kwah welcome this, and it is essentially a free refresh and elimination as they walk right up to them. This is a great way of understanding and showing you how to hold a player on the outside of zone using the help of other players and allowing them to be stonewalled right before they get to you. Once again, I want to talk about timing. We see Tabz is going to have to make and call this rotate for fifth zone. He sees an opening, he sees that not many players are already in zone, and decides to make the move immediately rather than hesitating. He spends some mats, gets them on the edge of zone, and then we will later see them push further into zone. This is because they have no materials. You want to get higher, you want to get more into the congested area, so you could potentially recycle any pads placed down. And this end game is that much more impressive knowing that they had no pads going into end game. First moving pulls away from where Tabz and Kwah are at. So we see Tabz is going to extend just a little bit to allow himself to have some time to search for a pad. No pads are found, so they have to make the rotate. And they're going to make what's called a stagger rotate. You run a little bit, you build a little bit, you base up, you wait, then you do the same. You run a little bit, you build a little bit, then you base up again. After a couple of these, maybe 2 to 3, you should be in zone and you spend much less materials than having to tarp the entire way. This allows them to make a much cheaper rotate, and if done correctly, it's not going to cause much damage to your body or your other players. Typically, the second player is going to be the one getting tagged up most, but we see them make a successful rotate. One of the other benefits of doing a stagger rotate is having time to look back. After you run to the front side, you can base up, look back for eliminations, a refresh, or just tags. This is going to allow some more flexibility, and we see once they get in zone, they've changed layers many times. Now, once they are in that position, it's going to be a good spot for them to relax and figure out how to make this next rotate. We're nearby hills, and you need to be aware of the elevation. 7th zone will reveal itself, and it's actually going to go through this mountain right in front of them. They have to quickly change elevation and realize they need to get up higher. Instead of just relaxing and waiting until something happens, they are preemptive and go up. They're buried a little bit, so they're going to have to stick together and make sure that they're making plays as a duo. Sticking hip to hip, they get through some of these old builds, and eventually they're going to be able to find a pad. Once they find a pad, they want to play higher, knowing that there's many elevation changes in store. The duo stays focused. Even when they're getting an elimination, Tabz recognizes zone is coming, and he has to make sure they're staying ahead on their rotate. While Kwah is going to go ahead and go for the materials, Tabz is going to lead the charge and get to the front side of zone, build them in. Kwah is going to then come with the refresh of the materials and support his teammate. This camaraderie and teamwork allows them to be super successful, and we see Kwah is going to pick up a number of elims and refreshes, while Tabz continues to keep the team where they need to be and guide them forward as we continue to move through these zones. It's a very beautiful combination of the two, with the player focused on rotates while the other player stays on their hip 90% of the time, but understands sometimes you need to go and grab that refresh in order to sustain your end game. One of the most impressive pieces and the reason why they win this game is their spatial awareness and terrain awareness. They know that the mountains and plateaus around want to be avoided if possible, but you might have to go up and over them. So they stay on the second height and mid-ground layer, eventually look for a tag and a play on the high ground. They're going to chop them down, and Kwah is going to get the elim onto Knifer, but Tabz will get traded out by Knifer's teammate, Okus. Unfortunately, the trade doesn't work out for Okus and Knifer. Nonetheless, Kwah is able to take the high ground, and he has enough mats in order to get him up this plateau. Once he's up on this point, this game is all but won. No one down below is going to have the amount of HP to climb up in the storm. They're not going to have any launch pads left, nor will they have the materials to actually even get up onto this mountain. All Kwah has to do is sit up here, understand he's won the game, and relax and be patient. This is a beautiful play by them, and a great play to try and grab the win rather than just to let this happen, because without that high ground play, it's likely Knifer and Okus that are just sitting up above, with Kwah and Tabz having to go down below and try and fight in the chaos for second place. Ultimately, it's what gets them the win, gets them into finals, and it's a beautiful play and overall a really smart game from them. So just remember, timing is everything, don't overcommit, and play to win the game. Thank you guys for watching. I'm somebodysgun, and I'll see you next time.